Good morning. This is Jason Dean on a Saturday at 12:16. It's a beautiful winter day. It's actually snowing out. It's kind of nice. I've said before I'm not a big fan of cold weather, but winter times have grown on me more. But I'm a big fan of snow. I actually enjoy the snow. It doesn't bother me if we just have days or nights of where we have very 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 cold weather and there's no snow on the ground. It gets to me a lot more. But if there's snow, I don't know, it eases that pain, I guess. But I do like the snow, and it's currently snowing right now, and because we haven't had any snow since Christmas Eve, which was pretty awesome. So yeah, I'm next up for me as far as going to the movies. I'm really excited to go see. It's coming out, I believe, next weekend, and there's been a lot of press. There's been some early reviews for the film, and it's it's sounding pretty good, like generally pretty good. And that's the new movie, The Wolfman. That's coming out. I believe it's coming out next Friday, the 17th. I definitely want to see that in the theater. It's directed by Lee Winnell, who is I've talked a lot about him before. He directed the outstanding The Invisible Man a few years ago, which was a kind of a reboot, a reimagining, but super awesome. I love that movie. I think it's great. I saw that movie in the theater, and I went into the theater totally cold when I saw it, and it was really great, and it was original, and I liked. It just had this fresh quality to it, and it was scary. Yeah, it was really great. It's an awesome horror movie. He also did another film which not a lot of people talk about, but I've been recommending it as much as I can because it's kind of an incredible movie. This movie called Upgrade. He directed that quite a few years ago. It's a sci-fi. It's more of a sci-fi kind of body horror film, but it's badass. And then he also was responsible for kind of kicking off and directing the first, or he didn't direct it, but he wrote it and starred in it. But the first Saw movie with James Wan, and he kind of started that franchise with him. And I'm a big fan of those movies. Excuse me. And so I'm excited. I mean, I think Lee Winnell as a director and as a writer and just everything he seems to be involved in is really good, like really really good. And he up all the way up until now, like I feel like he's got everything he touches is kind of is gold. So I'm excited. I saw the trailer for it. The only reason I saw the trailer for The Wolfman was because they had it before Nosferatu. So I've seen the trailer a few times, and it looks great. It looks really great. So I'm excited to see that. I definitely want to try to see that next weekend. That's the next movie as far as I'm very excited about. So yeah, stay tuned. Well, that will be a little while until I do a review for that, but I'm excited to see that movie. So yeah, that's something I'm very excited for. 2024 has been an awesome year. And I think, the last movie I saw of last year was Nosferatu. I saw it twice. I uploaded a show. I did a show about seeing it the second time the other day. And so I got to do a couple more things and it'll be up on the channel. But I think with that being the last movie that I saw in the theater in 2024, or no, sorry, I should say I saw Nosferatu twice, and the first time I saw it was Christmas weekend, and then I saw it this week. I saw it on Wednesday with some friends. So, but technically, still, it was the last movie I saw in the theater for 2024. And what a year! What a way to cap it off! What a what a awesome movie. So I did a second show on Nosferatu. This is like my fourth show I think I've done on the movie. It's really great, really great. So I will be posting that pretty soon. It's all uploaded, but I have to do a couple things before it goes on to the channel. And I want to thank again. There's been a lot of people, who keep commenting on the videos. I've been getting new subscribers. We're almost at 500. So I really appreciate the sharing, kind of the passion and love, you know, meeting other people who have the same interests that I have. They're into all things horror and all of these great films. And I'm always trying to bring diverse things. And again, I always go back to my well of pure inspiration, and that is the world of sleazy, low down and dirty exploitation movies. And so today's show is on, I think, one of the best one of the best movies. I did a little bit of a review of this movie early on. I think it was like when I first got this movie, and it was a few years ago. But I've seen this movie a few times since then, and it's such a classic. And I have kind of a weird history around this movie on how I finally discovered it. I had always heard about it, but I had confused it with this remake that had come out many years after, like in probably about 20, maybe about 20 years ago, this remake came out. And I thought that that was the only movie. I didn't realize that it was essentially a remake. And the movie I'm going to be talking about today is, I think definitely one of the best kind of slasher films out there, and that is the Toolbox Murders. This movie is so awesome. Like, it's such a great slasher movie. It's super disturbing at times. It's got some great kills. There's moments where I feel like it's definitely disturbing. It's uber sleazy. It's a very raw movie, and it came out in 1978. Again, pretty much came out on February 17th of 78. So it came out, right around the time Halloween came out. Kind of came out before it. And I am all about, tracing the lineage of slasher films. I love, there's a lot of people out there that, and rightfully so, it deserves the acclaim that it gets, because it is a classic, for obvious reasons. But there are a lot of folks that I think, and again, it's not that they're wrong or, ill-informed or even stupid. Of course not. But I think it's more of a, well, it's obviously a film that is a household name. Like, I think it's pretty safe to say that John Carpenter's Halloween is that movie it's a classic. I love that movie, of course, for many reasons. Last year, surprisingly, it was hard for me to get a really good Blu-ray edition of that film. And I finally got one, and it's amazing. And it's like, I feel like the definitive version of it. And it's a classic. It's one of the greatest slasher movies of all time. It's one of the most influential. But I think a lot of people say on the outside that look to that movie and maybe haven't really, say, explored a little bit of, you know, dove a little bit more into the 70s, into that glorious decade of the world of grindhouse and exploitation. I think there's a mindset that from people who obviously, well, a lot of people herald that movie as being like the biggest and the most influential slasher movies, and that I hear it a lot on YouTube where a lot of people say that movie is like the definitive slasher movie, and it kind of kicked off the entire genre because obviously what Sean Cunningham did with Friday 13th was a direct, kind of knockoff or ripoff of Halloween. And by the time that the 80s came, especially in the 80s, the slasher genre exploded. And that was due to, there's always a series of events in genres and things when they're created and what they inspire. And there is that golden moment of where Carpenter put out Halloween in '78, and then Sean Cunningham got wind of that movie, and they wanted to make money, cash, make some good cash money, and then that inspired them to, to a degree, really inspire a copy Halloween and try to emulate the success. But then that came out, the original came out, Friday 13th, and then that was a phenomenon. That was hugely successful, and then it spawned an entire franchise. But then also that also, you know, launched, was a mega kind of maybe like an apex, moment, or a zeitgeist moment in that genre, where it just ignited kind of the world on fire. And then suddenly, after that movie, there was like a bazillion slasher movies coming out, within, a 10 to 12 year period. Just, insane. And slashers are still like coming out. There's a new modern slasher movie that I just saw a little trailer for, and it actually looks really good. And I believe it's called Heart Eyes, and that's coming out pretty soon. And I'm kind of excited to buy that. And one of the best slasher movies, I think, is In a Violent Nature, and that's a brand new movie that came out last year. I just got that on Blu-ray. So those movies, it's without a doubt continued to inspire filmmakers to today. I mean, the slasher genre is still alive and well, even though it's been around since, like, I mean, arguably it started, in the early 70s, even maybe late 60s, so it's wild. But it wasn't until Halloween and Friday the 13th really, broke into the commercial realm, where it really ignited the whole genre. But I think what happens too often, like people who haven't taken that deep dive in the genre, and again, slashers it's my favorite genre. People who haven't, taken that deep dive to like explore, okay, what inspired, say, John Carpenter to, because everybody's going to be inspired by something. So a lot of the times people don't take that time to like, kind of dig into, like, okay, what obviously something inspired John Carpenter's to make Halloween. So, you trace back that lineage. And that was Black Christmas, which came out in 74, which to me, I think, and the Two Box Murders came out in 78, but to me, that's like, and there were slasher films and movies that had, you know, um, I think Blood Feast, for instance, Herschel Gordon Lewis, which I believe came out in 68. I consider that's like a horror film, super low budget, but it's super low budget, but I consider that movie a slasher movie, and that like came out quite a few years before Black Christmas. So there's like there's, I wouldn't say Black tracing things back, like Black Christmas is not the first slasher movie, but that I think overall is the first movie that really kind of took all those elements and put it together as a template. But during that time, the 70s, you had incredible movies like this that came out. And I didn't see this movie until like only a couple of years ago. I'd always heard about it, but it was a confusing thing around it. I'd always heard about this movie, and I'd always heard that this is a true underground classic. But I never saw it. And what the confusion was on my part is I have a movie that's called The Two Box Murders, and it came out in like shit. I think it came out like 20 years ago, and it was directed by Tobe Hooper, who, of course, one of the greatest horror directors of all time, most notably Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But he did a movie called Two Box Murders, which apparently I didn't know at the time was a remake of this film, and that remake is kind of a terrible movie. It's like at the very tail end of Tobe Hooper's career. It's not a very good movie. It's got really it's got no atmosphere. It's just a really shoddy movie. It just feels like a movie that, I don't know, almost like a made for TV, but not a good made for TV movie. It's not very good. So I always thought like, wow, like that's the Toolbox Murders. Why do people keep talking about that movie and saying how good it is? Because I love Toby Hooper, especially his early work. But I'm like, I didn't get it, and it wasn't until like quite a few years later when I realized, oh wait, no, that was actually a remake of this 1978 film, and I was like, holy shit! So I bought this probably like 3 years ago, and I saw it for the first time, and the remake doesn't resemble anything of the original. Uh, this movie is just awesome. I watched it again the other night. I've seen it probably about 3 or 4 times. It's again, the slasher genre is my favorite subgenre in the world of horror, and this movie I think is such a classic. It's so well done. It's and the other thing that's really wild about this movie is it's essentially based on some true life events that actually happened. It's a little bit there's a little bit of creative license I think taken with the film, but it's actually based on some true stories. And the story of this woman who or this man who was essentially a serial killer, and he killed a bunch of these women using these tools from his toolbox, and there were these series of these murders. And as the story kind of evolved, you realize that this whole thing runs a little bit deeper, and you realize that someone else who is related to the killer is also, kind of also a total psychopath, and it ends up being the the nephew of this guy who is the killer. And there's like this really morbid discovery through that, and you realize that the nephew of the killer is almost, well, is just as homicidal as his uncle, but maybe almost more. And it's a wild story. Like it's super intense, and it happened. The true account of this story happened in the late '60s. It's wild, and so it gives it. This film is a very it's very sleazy. It's got this real gritty quality to it. It is everything of why I love slasher movies and the '70s. It's kind of the epitome. It's got all those great, wonderful characteristics. But because the film is based on true events, it's a little bit harder to watch, and it's a little bit more disturbing. It's got some like gnarly and nasty kills in it. It goes to places where you're like, wow, okay, they went there. But it's an awesome movie, and this Blu-ray transfer is really great. It's got some decent special features. There's some pretty good interviews with some of the cast and crew, or the cast of this movie. But yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough. It's a gnarly ride. It's I think one of the most, if you love slasher films, like this is one of the most iconic films. I think it's right up there with like films like Mad Men, or the Burning, My Bloody Valentine, Maniac. I mean, so many great slasher films. This is definitely one of the best, and I think it's so well done. Also, like it's obviously very very low budget, and it's got all those characteristics. But this film is actually, from just being a film, it's really well done. Like it's really good. There's some skill behind this movie, and yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I did a show on this a few years ago, but I needed to talk about it again. It's such a great movie, and I think it's one of the best in the genre, and I think it's one of the most important films in the slasher genre. And it takes it back to '78, the old school times. '70s being my favorite decade, so you can't go wrong with this movie. Super awesome. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.